and welcome to the Osborne Group chat. Hi, Laurel. We haven't talked, it's been a little while since we've last talked.
Yes, absolutely. Excited to be back with you today. And we had a really long run of guest speakers, and I know people really like our guest speakers, but it's kind of nice to be back just with you today.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was a good run on guest speakers. And of course, we talk all the time, but this is the first time we've talked in a while to a wider audience. So I'm excited to be back here as well, and just in time to start fundraising season, right?
Yes. Yeah. End of year. I feel like, I don't know if this is a factor of age, but I think every month I say something like, can you believe it's already blank month, right? Like it's this constant disbelief of how quickly time goes by, but it is really crazy. And I think just everything going on in the world right now has exacerbated this, that it really, I mean, it's September next week, which is really, really crazy. So yeah, kind of getting ready to gear up for our big season.
Yeah, so it may be a little bit of a function of age, but I generally agree with you that it has been a little crazy. And I think that makes talking about this topic all the more important. So, yeah, so what should we be thinking about right now as we start to move into September?
Yeah, it's funny that I have started to see a little bit of a few kind of blog posts and webinars coming out about getting ready for the end of the year. But typically I tend to see them a lot more in like October and November, like how to finish the year strong. And I always think, well, yeah, we need to finish the year strong, but if we're waiting until October or November to think about our end of year strategy, we're in trouble, right? And I even think I said to you before this call, and I'm making a bold prediction right now, that come December, the thing that everyone is going to look back on and say really just threw a wrench into everything was the fact that Labor Day is so late this year, because it's as late as it can be. It's a whole full week later than it usually is. And by the time we get back from Labor Day, it's already September 7th, and then you're all groggy from Labor Day, and so you don't really do anything that week. And then so people are going to wait until essentially mid-September to even start thinking about their end of year strategy, which is scary to think about, right? Because if we don't really kind of get most things taken care of by the beginning of November, we're kind of out of time to do things. And so I thought, I really wanted to talk to Bob today about end of year and getting ready. And even if we can help people think about just like, what do I do in September? Like, what do I need to hit hard? What do I need to try to get done maybe next week? We'll get this podcast out, we'll get this chat out quick and try to get this in front of people next week. But how do I kind of maximize those first couple of weeks with the craziness of Labor Day and getting kids off to school and everything that's crazy right now? And then, what else do I want to try to get done for the rest of the month? So I guess I'm curious too, Bob, just, with everything with COVID and, again, the differences in how people are getting kids off to school this year and everything going on, do you have any bold predictions or any thoughts about how this end of year might be different than other end of years that we've seen in the past, or will it, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. And of course, we're all prognosticators these days of varying abilities. I guess for me, like I would be thinking about this. I would be operating under the assumption this is going to be a challenging year, and planning for that assumption and hoping that that's not the case. So I think there's a chance that things will be fine, and we'll kind of roll along our merry way, at least as far as fundraising goes. But I think there's a solid chance that it won't be. And I think if we're going to really see how COVID impacts philanthropy, it's going to be over the next 4 months. So I don't know if I have any predictions, but I think what it does necessitate is what you and I are always talking about and remains true is really doing the planning, and I think in this case, it's really looking at like, well, where are you in terms of your planning, and so for some organizations, you're a little more than halfway through. And so maybe you're looking at your gifts now and looking at what hasn't been closed. And I think for me, that's always the simplest way of thinking about this is like, what did I get last year? From who? And at least make sure I ask all those people in some way, shape, or form between now and the end of the year is sort of the simplest way of thinking about it. And some people probably just started their fiscal year in July, and for them, it's really making sure that you have a plan, a table of gifts, and that you really have some strategy that's mapped out in an empirical sort of way about how you're going to get at least 50, 60, 70, 80% of your money over the next, 3 or 4 months. Because I think for most not-for-profits, this is really the time where they raise the bulk of their money. So that's how I kind of look at it in a broad sort of way. What do you think about when you think about this time of year?
Yeah, I agree with you. You mentioned table of gifts, and it's probably, I always say that I probably talk about tables of gifts too much, but then maybe we can't talk about tables of gifts too much. And I feel like through this whole crazy year of uncertainty, I have more so than ever kind of doubled down on this idea of how are you using your table of gifts as a management tool to know how many gifts you need to bring in, how many prospects you need, who you've asked, to your point, who you haven't asked yet, who you have asked but you haven't heard from because you forgot to close the gift, and all of that stuff. And without that management tool, it to me becomes virtually impossible to have any idea about how or if you're going to end the year the way you want to. And so, now I will just point people again to our website, theosborngroup.com. On the resources page, you can go and download a template table of gifts if you don't have one already. And if you don't have one already, you gotta go get one, because it's really, really important. And I think too, it's I was talking to a client the other day about, there's all these people I want to have a conversation with. I haven't had a chance to have a conversation, a non-ask conversation with them yet. So if I can get a visit sometime between now and let's say the end of October, do I, go ahead with my strategy of having this kind of non-ask visit, or do I go ahead and make the ask? And I think, again, that's where your table of gifts is going to dictate that for you, because it's not March, where if I'm on a calendar year, fiscal year, maybe in March I can just go and have a nice cultivation or stewardship visit and not have the pressure of making an ask then and there. But we're in crunch time now. I mean, if it's the end of the year, if I have budget goals that need to be met within the next 4 months, I may not have that option, right? And so I think you kind of have to take it case by case, and we do maybe have to put asks out there that aren't ideal and aren't the biggest ask that we would have hoped to make, but we make that interim ask, right? We make that ask that pushes us forward toward a bigger gift in 2021. The other thing I always tell people too is you can have a really nice cultivation / stewardship visit with someone, and then make we always talk about getting a yes to a next step out of a visit, and make it clear that the next step is a proposal that's coming their way in the next couple of weeks, right? And so you make it, you can have a really, if you really feel like it's not the time to do an ask visit, I think you just make sure that you've set yourself up really strategically to make a bigger ask out of the meeting. And I said to this client, I said, if you can take the first 2 weeks of September and get all your ducks in a row, right? Get your table of gifts updated, get your priority list of donors, figure out who your potential lapsed donors are, all of that stuff. Take the next 2 weeks to do that, and then give yourself the next 4 weeks after that to get as many visits done as humanly possible. And then that way, by mid-October, you have a really good idea of what you still have left, and you've left yourself another like 3 or 4 weeks before Thanksgiving to actually kind of pick up all the loose ends, right? The people who still haven't returned your call and all of that kind of stuff. So I really, right now, I think that's a really nice strategy is, kind of mid-September, just get everything all sorted, knowing that with Labor Day and school and everything that's going on, it's going to be hard to get visits or harder to get visits in the next couple of weeks. But then just that kind of mid-September to mid-October, like, and take the next couple of weeks to gather your team, right? So board members, CEOs, other staff members, like get everybody's calendars sorted, figure out who can do how many visits when. The great thing about COVID is everything's virtual now. And so we have the lessened issue of like coordinating in-person visits. Now, at least we just have to coordinate calendars to get everybody on Zoom at the same time, right? So it's a little bit easier, but yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of, if I were running my own shop today and I was kind of realizing like, oh my gosh, it's August 27th, that's probably the approach that I would take.
Yeah, I really like the trying to get as many visits as you can, getting your ducks in order now and then getting as many visits as you can, because, I think you and I talk a lot about figuring out what you don't know as much as evaluating what you do know. And I think checking in with your donors and really understanding sort of where they are in this moment is particularly important. And so, to your point, you can do an ask pretty quickly after those visits, if at all possible. But I would really want to know, right, between now and like October 15th or so, like where is everybody? What are they thinking? What's their status? How do they feel about the work? Because it does give you enough time to do something about it, but it also really gives you really valuable information that you can use in making those asks. And I think that's really important because one, you'll increase your chances of getting that yes, and if for some reason you get a no, you'll have a better reason, you'll have a better understanding of why maybe that happened. So I really like that. I think in development is one of those things where what you do today has an effect 2 to 3 months from now. And so we're right inside that window of where you can still change your outcomes, but the window is rapidly closing, and it closes a lot faster than I think people think it does. And so, these next couple of months are really, really critical, because anything that happens after that, you're not going to see a radical change in your status with the donor. You can, it's not that you can't close that gift, to your point, a gift of some kind, but if you want to see real movement from where a donor is today, you're going to see that a few months down the road, the effects of the things that you do today, a few months down the road. So it's time to get moving. I wonder what you think about, is there any change in strategy we should be making, given that we're probably going to see a lot of appeals out there? There are going to be a lot of emergency appeals. I'm already starting to see emergency appeals. Day of giving is out there. Like, there's going to be a lot of direct marketing out there. Do you have any thoughts about, should we be doing things differently? How should we be thinking about that?
Yeah, I'm by no means a direct mail expert, but I think that, again, why getting our messages out there early and often is going to be really important. And now more than ever, case for support becomes so important. Whenever I talk to people about, hey, do you have a written case for support? And I kind of get a roll of the eyes, like, here comes, Mother Laurel asking me if I've made my bed again, right? And it's like, well, no, it's important. This is important stuff. And more than ever, like, I've really been encouraging people in the last few months to review their case for support, or write one if they don't have one yet, but really kind of review it and write it from the perspective of COVID, right? And everything going on in the world right now. What is your unique value proposition given the state of the world? And we should always be doing that, right? I mean, our case for support should always be reflective of community needs and what's happening and how we're responding. We should always be relevant to the world, but even more so now. And I think even more so to those organizations that feel like maybe they aren't as relevant as other organizations are to certain things. You know, we've been seeing a lot of funding go toward, obviously, healthcare, you know, other kind of emergency services around COVID, but we've also seen a lot of money being funneled into Black Lives Matter, anti-racist, the anti-racist movement, all of which are really, really important. But I think every nonprofit continues to fill a need. And every nonprofit continues to have a vision and a mission that needs to be fulfilled. And I think you need to find your message that's not gimmicky and not false and not a spin, but is real and is authentic and genuine to the needs you're serving in your community and why it's so important for your supporters to continue with you. And I just don't know that, I feel like a lot of times with direct marketing, if you're not working with a really smart consulting firm who's helping you think through those messages, a lot of people are doing homegrown appeals, which is fine. But I think sometimes when you're doing some of your own homegrown appeals, you can fall victim to maybe getting a little gimmicky or spinning a little bit, or feeling like, well, we're not as important as some of these other causes are right now, so I'm gonna, you know, kind of play it a little less, you know, kind of, you know, we need urgent, right? And I think, well, if you're not gonna beef up urgency at this time of year, then you're probably not going to see a lot of results either. So I don't know, that's kind of my thought about it from a direct marketing appeal perspective. But then again, obviously, I think when you start looking at your higher mid-level donors and your major gift prospects, that's a whole other story, right? Because that's all about personalized messages, conversations, and, you know, all that kind of stuff. I lost my train of thought, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, any thoughts on that, Bob?
Yeah, you know, I'm not sure. You know, I think we're all kind of going through this together. I guess there's things I would say not to do. So one, you know, I think I had one client suggest that they make their appeals be, you know, very focused on Black Lives Matter, which is nice, except that this client has absolutely nothing to do with racial justice, equity, or anything even vaguely resembling that. It literally has nothing to do with that. So I think there's a temptation to, you know, to acknowledge the moment, and I think that's laudable, but just to make sure that your messaging is true to who you are, and you can certainly look at it through a COVID lens or a Black Lives Matter lens or an anti-racist lens, but to be true to your own mission, and because to not be true, it's going to come off as completely inauthentic, and that's not something that you want. And then, yeah, I wonder a little bit about whether doing appeals like on Giving Tuesday, or like, I would probably be less inclined this year maybe to do that, you know, and try to find a time when not everyone else is doing mailings. But, you know, the thing about direct marketing is, like, you really don't know what's going to happen until you try it, and then it's too late. So, you know, I think I would give it thought and think about how it fits into my overall calendar and just sort of the other things that I'm doing. And then the last thing I would say is, like, the thing that I kind of can't stand getting is the emergency, you know, appeal. Like, you know, we're going to go under unless you help us, you know. And you know, if that's absolutely true, then, you know, then fine. Maybe you have to do that just to let people know. And if you do that, you should understand that that's going to hurt your credibility going forward, you know, and from a fiscal standpoint. But something short of that, people give because they care about the work that you do. And I think in those situations, you really have to, even if you really do need the money, to really frame it in terms of the people you help, the communities you help, the clients that you help, and let them know that, you know, without you, you know, these people are going to be worse off, suffer, whatever it is, but not to, you know, frame it as we're going to go under unless you know, help us. I just find that always to be off-putting to me, even for organizations that I really, really like.
Yeah, I always go back to one of the earliest fundraising maxims that I ever heard as a development professional, and this was probably the first year of being in development. Somebody said to me that people give to needs, but they invest in assets. And you know, your example is such a perfect illustration of that, right? So if I'm going out there and I just need money, right, because we're going to close our door, I might get kind of like a go away gift, right? I might get the
Right.
$50 like, okay, fine, I'm sorry that that's a terrible situation, here you go kind of gift. But who's going to invest big dollars in that, right? You always think about the business proposition. If I'm a you think about these big like hedge fund investors and you know business investors, and you know if somebody walked into like Shark Tank and was like, oh well, we're barely hanging on by a thread and we're going to go out of business next week, like they're probably not going to get any money, right?
That's
They're
true.
not going to get any investments. And I think that's, you know, in the nonprofit sector we have to think about that as well. We need to lead with our assets. We need to lead, even like to your point, even if I am potentially going to go out of business in the next 3 months, I still need to lead with why this matters, why it's so important that we do this, rather than what's going to happen if we don't get dollars in the door. Yeah, so important. One of the things I did want to chat about before we wrap up is efficiencies around, especially donor visits, and just all of the kind of things to get ready for having good donor visits. I've really been talking to clients a lot about this lately. You know, and we talk a lot at the Osborne Group about donors having good donor strategy. We have a lot of resources and training that we do around good visit prep, and you know, we should be thinking about, you know, what do we want people to say yes to, and what strategic questions do we want to ask, and you know, all of these things. And I think that we know that in an ideal world, when we are, especially for our major gift prospects, that we're doing, you know, really detailed and well thought out strategy around, you know, what do we know, what do we not know, where do we need to get to, all of this kind of stuff. But I also recognize that in the next couple of months, people just need to get out and do a lot of visits. And I don't want people to get so stuck on spending so much time on strategy that
Mhm.
they don't just get out and do visits. So one of the things that I've been talking to clients a lot about is creating, and again, this is something you can do in the first 2 weeks of September as you're getting all your ducks in a row, is, you know, hopefully you all have, hopefully everybody has a list of engagement opportunities, right? And it's probably a really long list. You know, maybe there's 50 things on it that a person could do with your organization, but I would pick like 10 that you put on a little cheat sheet, right? Like the 10 from, you know, and rank them from lowest level of engagement to highest level of engagement. Pick the 10 quickest, easiest, best ones that people can do. I would pick, and that's kind of like you're getting people to say yes to a next step options, right? I would pick a handful of strategic questions. Like I would pick like, go to download our strategic questions resource, which is on our website, and you know, just pick like 10 again. And then every time you get ready for a meeting, pick 3 out of that 10 that you're going to ask. But find some ways to really create some efficiencies for yourself over the next 2 months, so that you're not having to spend, you know, an hour preparing for each of these visits, but maybe you spend 15 minutes preparing for these visits, because you've got kind of this cheat sheet of, you know, here's what I need to know before I go into this visit, minimum that I need to know about this donor before I go in. Here's my, you know, 3 or 4 strategic questions, and here's my 2 or 3 potential engagement activities that I'm going to ask them to say yes to, right? Or maybe it's I'm asking them for a gift. But I just think that there's, yes, we want you in best practice to do like really thorough, well thought out donor strategy. But right now, I'd rather you do some really efficient donor strategy than either do too much or do none at all.
Yeah, I like that. And so I will emphasize the need for an engagement catalog, just like you said. Like having like a set pieces is really helpful, that you can pull in. Having background engagement opportunities that are kind of there that you can use opportunistically is really helpful. So vision meetings and small events and panel discussions and all of what you can do online is good to have too, that you can just kind of plug and play with different donors. Maybe it fits in as part of your major gift strategy. Maybe it's just like a nice bonus, but they're there. And then, like, I'm a big believer in efficiency when it comes to donor strategy. Like, if you find that you are talking about someone for more than 10 minutes, probably one of two things is happening. Either you're just talking about them because that's fun, but not very useful. And so you probably, you don't need to talk about them. I like to think about, like, what don't I know? So if we're doing strategy and we're debating something, that means we don't know. So we should find that out. So as soon as you find yourself having a back and forth with your executive director or your director of development, whoever it is, that's a sign that you don't know the information, and that can be the next thing that you're going to discover as part of your visit. So I think it's 10 minutes of prospect and 10 minutes of prospective donor, and then you move on to the next thing, and you just do them in small chunks. You don't have to doing 20 of them in a day becomes inefficient, but if you do 10 of them at a time, that can be reasonably efficient. And then the other thing I'll add before we wrap up too, I wanted to just briefly, I'll fold it in to this topic, is really, this is a great time to get your board active again. You're going to need them, particularly this year. It's going to be more important than ever. This really is an all hands on deck situation, and so checking in with your board right now, this is a great time. In the next couple of weeks, they're probably all wandering back from vacation or whatever it is they've been doing this summer. You'll probably be able to get their attention within the next week or two, and just figuring out how they can help you. I mean, I think everyone is very aware of the situation. I think people and board members are very aware that we really need them as much as ever at this time. And so whatever you can do to actively engage them and really kind of map out how they can help you over the next few months, I think is a win for everybody, and goes to efficiency, as you were talking about. If you can get more people helping you do these asks, do these cultivations, executing on major gift strategy, that's really gonna really change the volume of development work that you'll be able to do over the next few months. So don't forget your board. Don't wait until your October board meeting, to get them going, and don't spend all your time on, like, the agenda. I find sometimes that happens too. Like, the board meeting means reports and figuring out what we're going to say and all this, when really we should be spending our time, like, how can this board help us with strategy and how can we use them to move forward? And it doesn't have to be, it should not be an exercise of just preparing for the meeting itself. It really should be an exercise in how do we engage our board and really make use of them over the next few months. So I just want to throw that in there too.
Yes, so glad you pointed that out. And I will put a link at the end of this video to a webinar that I did a little while back that's all about engaging your board in end of year activities. So for any of you who want a little bit more on what Bob said, because it really is the best time of year to get them engaged. So well, thanks, Bob. This was super. I get super excited about when we get into the really tangible, like, let's just go do really strategic things. So I think we went a little longer than normal, but hopefully all but yeah, unless you have anything else to add, I just want to wish everyone the best of luck in the next few months. And obviously, if people have questions or need some help, they can always reach out to us at the Osborne Group.
Yeah, I think you said it well. So best of luck to everyone, and we'll see you at our next chat. Bye, Laurel.
Bye.